Chapter 25 Year 889 PXF Late Autumn. Osmond awoke as the judge, with Thorn nestled into the warmth of his saldric body like a kitten. The overwhelming feeling of protectiveness for Thorn was more significant than anything the judge's instincts might inspire. It eclipsed even his feelings for his Crodran. Within his chest, next to the judge's mighty heart, he could feel the tiny matching beat of his keel for Quentin, and that this human snoring gently next to him was that little heartbeat's true love. Osmond's shuddering intake of breath at the thought shook Thorn awake. He rolled over with a yawn and a stretch, giving the judge's belly a rub in the process. "Sleeping next to you is like curling up with a furry furnace, big guy. As much as I appreciate the warmth, we probably should talk. There's still a lot we need to discuss," Thorn said as he stood up, breath visible in the chill morning air. He ventured to the edge of their camp, the higher ground between the hills left blessedly free of the thick fog smothering the rest of the lowlands around them, and surveyed the dawn. By the time he turned around, Osmond had regained his natural form and was sitting on the bedroll. Thorn looked over his shoulder as though he sensed the change. "How are the reserves holding out?" Thorn asked immediately, checking on Osmond's well-being.
"Great. With the boar and the apple, at least 2 more channels, if not more, depending on what we are tasked with doing,"
Osmond replied, adding with a smile,
"Good morning, brother,"
letting the words linger in his heart. The sight of Thorn looking out from the campsite lit by the morning sun transported Osmond to a morning long ago in Kaiflanor.
"Thorn, I would like to share something with you, if you are willing,"
Osmond said, continuing with a bit of formality.
"It is how my people share themselves, both in simple greetings and when forging a deeper bond with those they care for."
"I would like that," Thorn replied. "What do I do?"
"Come sit,"
Osmond said, motioning to the place across from himself.
"For humans it can be underwhelming, but for Uldani with deep connections it can also be intense. For us, with our shared souls, who's to say? So sitting down is probably for the best."
Osmond continued, reciting all he remembered from when Anson taught him to read other people's faces.
"My people believe that all emotions are etched upon our faces, and that you can read them if both people open themselves to sharing them."
Osmond gave Thorn a nod to see if he was following. Thorn nodded back.
"Just place your fingertips upon my face, and let your feelings guide them to where they need to go."
Thorn tentatively placed his fingertips across Osmond's forehead, arrayed over his brow. Osmond mirrored the configuration on Thorn's face, and then opened his keel to being read. A searing pain ripped through Osmond as the sky turned blood red and the earth cracked and blackened like a festering scab around them. He was no longer sitting, and Thorn stood beside him as the rising sun turned to an unblinking eye. Serena's eye. It scanned the despoiled countryside in a manic search. "Where are you, Osmond? Those fools said an Uldani was skulking about. You can't hide from me." Thorn grabbed Osmond's hand with one hand and yanked a necklace from around his neck with the other. He bound their hands together with the necklace's vine-like links adorned with what looked like a silver acorn. "This will hide us," he said with urgency. "Is this normal? It reeks of Coeur Vermain blood magic," he added, looking around at the haunting scene. Osmond replied,
"No, even keel visions don't feel like this."
He scanned their surroundings, trying to discern how to break the connection that held them in this reality. To Osmond's side was the spirit presence of the matriarch, her form shimmering with the light of the Solenfell and eyes filled with burnished golden fire. Serena's voice echoed across the scene before them. "I feel you spying on me, Osmond." The gaze of the solitary eye continued to roam over the landscape, now more slowly. "Funny how in all your weepy pillow talk you never mentioned that your father had another son." Osmond squeezed Thorn's hand tighter, wondering if Serena had somehow spotted them, mistaking Thorn's identity for some unknown brother. At the thought of the question, the trickster appeared on Thorn's shoulder and shook her head in the negative, confirming their shroud still held. Serena was speaking of someone else. He did well to hide him near the Lyrian rift. A wave of dread hit Osman, its keel like a sinking galleon in his gut. Cold sweat broke out on his brow as he fought to remain still and silent, eyes locked on Thorn to draw strength. Serena continued in a slithering lilt. They say the two most potent forces of the arcane are blood and love. And while Talon's silly, deluded heart might have sent you what was rightfully mine, your own blood will be what betrays his bond to you. Bring me the Vermilion Blade, or Quentin dies. An image of Arnador Keep assaulted Osman's mind as the scene of the desiccated landscape shattered around him. Just as quickly as it had begun, Osman found himself in his original position, sitting across from Thorn with hands on one another's faces, both their eyes wide with what they had just experienced. We shouldn't speak until we are back at the orchard, Thorn whispered urgently, his hand going to the silver acorn still hanging around his neck, unaffected by his actions within the vision. Osman nodded, his thoughts spinning. Serena had found Quentin. She referred to him as his father's son, and not Riken or in any way that connected him to Talon or Thorn. Was it possible that she didn't know that Quentin was actually Riken reborn? Would she care? First things first. Thorn said they needed to get to Milgren's orchard as quickly as possible. Osmond felt his body dissolve into embers and reform as the trickster. Osmond did not fully understand the trickster, but knew some of what she could do. He leaped onto Thorn's shoulder and sank into her instincts with a single thought: the cidery. Osmond felt Thorn's body lurch in reaction to the dizzying and disconcerting sensation of the world seeming to fold around them while they stood still. Immovable objects leapt out of their way or distorted in strange, unnatural ways to allow their passage. After less than a handful of breaths, they arrived inside the cidery, standing near the shrouded night lantern that still cast its warm glow in the early morning hours. Thorn folded over, only catching himself from falling by placing his hands on his knees. Osmond deftly leapt off his back and returned to his humanoid form, patting his brother on his back while scanning the room for a rubbish barrel in case Thorn's stomach decided to completely turn over. "Efficient, but not terribly pleasant, I'll admit," Osmond consoled. "But far more useful than a returning stone. From what little I have tested, an open flame only needs to be present at your destination, and she can't cross open water." "Gods, a warning would have been appreciated, brother," Thorn said, choking back bile. "The safest place to speak openly is in the orchard, near the largest tree in the center," Thorn weakly stated as he righted himself, still wobbling on his heels. Osmond and Thorn stepped out of the cidery into the deep fog blanketing Milgren's orchard. Osmond almost grabbed the night lantern, seeing the impenetrable shroud of gray, but Thorn waved him off. Of course, he would know the way. Osmond followed Thorn into the grove of apple trees that looked like regiments of ghostly sentinels standing at the ready. If similar to the rest of his travel across Elerion, Osmond knew it could be hours before the sun's rays would burn through and chase away the rime frost that sugar-coated the smaller branches and few remaining apples on the trees. A shiver danced like an ice fairy up Osmond's spine, the keel of déjà vu separating him from his body and making it seem like he was seeing through a second set of eyes just an instant behind himself. The deep fog and the orchard's crystallized foliage were playing tricks on Osmond's senses, twisting the trees into the recalled memory of the bodies frozen in the Guardian's Grove. As they progressed, the ranks of lesser trees seemed to part and gave homage to the looming presence of the grand central tree of the grove. Compared to the other trees in the orchard, it was like an oak among saplings. At nearly double the height and twice the breadth, it drifted imposingly out of the fog as they approached. Osmond followed Thorn and ducked under the tree's low-hanging boughs, the first thick branch hanging barely above his head. "Hopefully this is safe from Serena's magics. If it weren't, she wouldn't still be looking for the blade," Thorn stated as he laid a reverent hand on the scar where the vermilion blade was embedded in the tree's trunk. "It's here?" Osmond asked. "Practically in her backyard? And she never came for it? How?" he continued, bewildered. Thorn told Osmond about Casparian, the sickle, and all the details of his battle against Drabian. I think this is as close to hallowed ground as possible outside Casparian's sacred groves and the spring I've encountered. If I've learned anything about my enigmatic conjoined patron and their nature, it's that balance is integral to their workings.
The evil of the Vermilion Blade balanced with the blessing of the orchard,
Osmond pondered aloud. Exactly, Thorn confirmed. This is the tree the apple came from. Osmond scanned the branches, which were bare of the remarkable fruit.
Are there no more?
He asked. Thorn reached into his pack. I have only this one I know is from the tree. I picked the last ones remaining on its branches this morning, and they will be long sorted in with the rest of the harvest by now. Do you think you can spot them among all the others? Thorn asked, a voice full of hope.
I'm not sure. It was just a hunch that the apple was special, and that was when there were no others around. Perhaps, but certainly not easily.
Osmond reasoned.
I assume that is why the tree hasn't drawn any magical attention. If the apple's power were apparent, the tree would shine like a divine beacon to any who looked.
Thorn turned back to the tree, placing his hand again on the scar. He bowed his head and dejectedly sighed, saying, I can't give it to her, Osmond, even to save your brother's life. Osmond crossed to Thorn and laid a hand on his back.
I know. We can't let her or your father ever possess the Vermilion Blade again.
Osmond paused.
But Quentin is not my brother. That's the name we gave Riken when he was reborn to hide his identity.
What? Thorn demanded.
Quentin is Riken?
Thorn spun as he dropped to sit on the ground, back against the tree beside the scar. He drew his knees up, supporting his head with hands at his forehead. I nearly died in this exact spot to bind the blade, ready to trade my life to rid the world of its evil. Now I must choose between Riken, whom I have loved for a lifetime, and unleashing the blade once again? Thorn's voice sounded utterly hopeless.
A friend of mine would say we should look at all the blessings we have in our boat and stop chasing the dream that got away,
Osmond said sagely, then adding,
but not this time. We are getting him back, and we'll keep the Vermilion Blade out of Serena's hands.
Osmond sat beside Thorn, putting his arm around his shoulders, and pulled him in tight as they leaned against the tree.
We just need a plan.
Thorn drifted out of his hopelessness and stated, Talon worked in the keep for 15 years, from lowly guard to knight captain. I know its layout and passages like the back of my hand. Osmond squeezed Thorn's shoulders.
There we go.
He added his insight to their assets.
From my experience with one of her creatures, Serena can't detect me when I'm in my soul-channeled forms. So we potentially could have the element of surprise.
Thorn mused thoughtfully. Nez has been working on something for me. It wouldn't fool her for long, if at all, but perhaps it could distract her long enough to be useful if she was already startled.
In every situation,
Osmond cleared his throat with a hint of embarrassment.
Serena always demanded to be in control. Once we take that away from her, she gets flustered.
He clarified.
She enters everything she does assuming she has thought of all possibilities and planned for them. The more we can keep her off balance, the better.
We are going to need time, Thorn said. We can't rush into this. One mistake could doom all of us and deliver the Vermilion Blade into her hands.
I'm not sure how we can get her a message without giving away any of our advantages,
Osmond stated. Oh, I have an idea of who those fools she mentioned most likely were, Thorn said, rolling his eyes.